Um, Natasha, if you want to put your slides up, and I'll introduce David and Natasha. David was born and raised in Brevard County, and with mentors like Helen Cruikshank and Johnny Johnson, and probably 40 years in the field, is it now?
Yeah, since I started birding with other people, it's been about 40 years, and about 10 years before that on my own.
And he's led tours since he was a teenager for his Audubon chapter, and also 12 years as a state park ranger, and for Space Coast Birding and Wildlife Festival, and for private clients through his Birding for David Simpson company. And he's an eBird reviewer and regional coordinator and lister, county lister. I'm sure he'll mention all that. And then Natasha has been interested in birds since she was quite young, with an 8th grade science fair project, The Aerodynamics of Birds' Wings. And she comes from New York, and she finally volunteered at New York City Audubon and obtained a position at the herbarium at the New York Botanical Garden. And she was first introduced to recording birds as an assistant at the Lottie Lab at CUNY Queens. And in 2017, she had the amazing opportunity to attend the Cornell Lab of Ornithology sound recording workshop. And I'll let her tell you plenty about that. I think David also, was it the same year that you were up there?
Might have been the same year, I think, actually. It was around that time, I think. So
was it the same year?
I have to look at it. Might have been, actually. You said that, and I was like, I think it might have been. I don't remember. I had to look. It's been quite a while since I was there, but yeah, but I did attend it. And it was very comprehensive and very interesting, and very equipment intensive, certainly, but
yeah,
what an immersive opportunity. We'll mention that in the talk for you guys.
All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome.
Okay.
for doing this.
Okay. So hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. So this is basically a rundown of what we're gonna cover. There's more. David is also gonna have his own kind of section that he'll be covering. And so really the whole point of us giving this presentation is for you to participate and ask the questions that you would be interested in. So really, this is not going to be a comprehensive overview. It's just going to be really kind of quick, just to kind of get you all started thinking about questions that you may have about this topic in general. So first, I'm going to cover really quick tuning in, how to quick tips on how to start training your ear, because birding by ear, it's a practice that you do have to train for. I'm going to go over some recording equipment basics of microphones and recorders, things that I use. And then there'll be a slide showing identification resources such as the Merlin app, and also one of my favorite books. And once again, I just want to reiterate, please ask questions. Okay, here we go. There it is. Can you see my next slide?
Yeah.
David, you see my next slide? Okay, great.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So birding by ear. I kind of think about birding by ear that you really have to train yourself to tune in. And so what does that mean? It's more so is a lot of times people, they are so concerned about, well, what species am I hearing? And so the way I like to show people a bird by ear is to first focus on categorizing the sound. And so what I mean by that is think about the different sounds you're hearing, not necessarily the species you're hearing. And you can do this practice maybe like 10 minutes a day, you know, when you're out on your walk or you're sitting on your porch or whatever, you know, just sit down and count the different sounds that you hear. It's sort of like when you're listening to music and you're thinking about, oh, that's a drum, that's a bass, or that's a violin or piano. And so all of those are different sounds. So I kind of think it's very similar to listening to music and understanding the different instruments in music. And so you can basically ask yourself like, oh, was that sound high pitched, or was it low? Was it a long sound, you know, or short, or does it have a pattern, or was it just the one note that you continuously hear? And then, you know, after you do this, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and you're counting and you're like, okay, well, I just heard 10 different sounds. Then you can challenge yourself to think about, well, where is this sound coming from? focus on one sound at a time and ask yourself, is it coming from the canopy? Is it coming from mid-story or from the ground? And I would suggest doing this maybe like, whenever you're out, and focus on this for like this exercise alone for like a week or two, and just really get your mind and your ears tuned into just thinking about noticing different sounds, and not necessarily the species in the beginning. And then when you feel like, okay, it's time for me to start thinking about, well, what species this is, you can start to create your own mnemonics, and that's going to help you recognize, it's going to help you kind of, I guess, label. I personally don't like the mnemonics in the books. Like, I never hear what they're saying. It's like Caroline or Wren is supposed to be tea kettle. I never hear tea kettle. And especially when there's a lot of geographic variation between like New York, South Carolina, and coming down into Florida, there's a lot of geographic variation that I don't hear it as tea kettle. So I usually make up my own mnemonics, and I always like to encourage people to do that as well, because that helps you recognize and personalize the sound that you're hearing. And then most importantly is, now when you're ready, get eyes on your bird. A lot of time I suggest people don't even use binoculars when you're learning how to bird by ear, because you're always so tempted to try and find out the species in the beginning before your ear is actually trained to differentiate between sounds. But when you get to that level, definitely get eyes on your bird. And I also like to encourage people to like take the time to watch it as it's singing, if you can, or watch it as it's calling, because that basically gets you to, recognize the sound. Now you have eyes on it, and it just solidifies in your mind. And then I also like to tell people to kind of challenge yourself to learn a species a day. And later on, we'll get into how you would identify the species once you're seeing it, or, if you're having trouble with that and connecting the dots. But if you can't learn a species a day, you can do it a week or something. But I'm pretty sure you know what I mean by just making like your own personal challenge. Okay, next. Once again, this is just a really quick overview. So when it comes down to recording equipment, I like my microphones. David will tell you that he doesn't use all of these things. I like to experiment with a lot of these different things, and it can seem overwhelming, but I'm going to kind of show, and hopefully everyone can see. So this first microphone here, the Sennheiser, there's the MKE 200 or the MKE 400. And so these are really small microphones. This is the 400 here. And you can see it's basically the size of my hand. And I'll take this off. This is the wind protection. And so you can see it's very slim. And so this is the 400. The 200 is half this size. It's like right where my finger is. So it's just basically that. And if you were interested in this microphone, it also comes with a cord that goes right into your phone. And so you can, I don't use my phone to record because I just don't have a good phone. And I have all the other stuff, but David's going to get into recording using your phone. And so I'm not against using your phone to record at all. I think it's great, but I do think that it's really helpful to have an external mic that you can attach to your phone. And once again, as you can see how small this microphone is. And this microphone by far is very powerful and is one of my favorite microphones. The next microphone is this shotgun mic here. This is an ME66. The 67 is a little bit longer, and I'll take the windscreen off so you can get a look. It's very small, it's light, it comes into two pieces. If I can, oh, here it is. So it's just two pieces, it's really light and really small. And a lot of times, sometimes carrying the equipment can get clunky if you have a parabolic, but with these two microphones, it's pretty light and pretty easy to carry around. I use a recorder to record. And once again, as you can see, it's about the size of my hand. They have newer models that I'll show you in another slide that's about half this size. And I think it's because a lot of people are recording with their phones now. The company is looking to compete with the size and the lightness of it. So they're making these models much smaller. So that's kind of like a basic overview of recording equipment, external equipment. This is also one of the larger recording microphones that you can have. I have both this bendable parabolic, so that's my one I use for traveling, and it's really light. It's clearly, you can see it folds up. You can just roll it up and you put it in your suitcase or in your backpack. Super simple. When you have the non-portable one, it is a bit heavier with the larger parabolic, the one that's in the middle. But then if you take a look, there's also the mini parabolic. I have not used one of the mini ones before, but I have a friend who has, and he said that he likes it. So if you are interested in going into a level of recording with a parabolic, the small little handheld one is an option if you don't want to have so many things on you. A lot of times when I'm out birding by ear and recording, I kind of do them separately sometimes, but that's primarily because I use the larger parabolic mic. But when I have my smaller microphones, it's really easy. Sometimes I put this in my pocket, so it works out. Okay, the next slide. So this is basically a basic overview, which you can find on the Cornell website, which I'll put the link in the chat for people who are interested to get an external recorder. If you look at the last one here, the Tascam DR05X, that's the one that I was explaining. That's about half the size of this one and very light. So it's like half of this. So like I said, they're making these recorders smaller and smaller because they're definitely trying to compete with people who record with their phone and just making it easier. And then, so now identification resources. So once you get birding by ear and you know, I think everyone needs a little help sometimes when they're trying to identify species. I use a number of resources. So I use the Merlin ID app, but I use it very lightly because seeing and hearing is definitely a best practice when you're using the Merlin ID app. I use it really lightly because I have more of a favorite go-to guide, which is this Peterson Field Guide to Bird Sounds. And so I really love this book because David's going to show you spectrograms. And once you have your recordings uploaded on a spectrogram, you can see the notes. And once again, it's like music notes. And this Peterson Field Guide to me is like a dictionary. And unfortunately, I don't have all the pages, you know, here on a screenshot, but just to give you a small description, that in the back of this book, they break down every single note that you can find. And what you do is you basically piece together, it's almost like a puzzle, you piece together the sounds that are connected to which species in this field guide. And so I really like to learn this way because that's when you, to me, even though it's a little bit more tedious, you won't forget it. So that's why I really like doing it that way, because it's really hard to forget once you go through the whole steps of understanding and breaking down the song or the call that you're trying to ID. And last thing that I'm going to mention it as a resource is BirdNet, which I also use, but very lightly. I think BirdNet is my last go-to that I can't figure it out in a book. I can't like figure it out 100%. So I am looking for hints. So I'll go to BirdNet, and you can also download it as an app, but you could also do it online. You don't need to download it on your phone, and you upload your recording. And so what it does is it basically analyzes one song. So like Merlin, the Merlin app, when you're out and you're using the sound ID, it's giving you a list of birds that it is picking up. But with BirdNet, you upload one recording, and then it spits out, the algorithm spits out the species probability. So it'll, as you see on the bottom, like for example, this one is showing, oh, it's 91% northern cardinal or 14% indigo bunting. And then it gives you a final prediction. Here is also what it will look like. So it gives you this list with the probability of what species it's suggesting. And so like, for example, here it says American goldfinch. And so I would, for example, take this as American goldfinch, I would go to my field guide, Nathan Pipelo book. I'd look up American goldfinch, because now BirdNet's given me the hint, kind of given me the hint of where I can start doing the research to find out what I was hearing. So yeah, hopefully that was clear. And I know I went really fast because I'm going to give some time for David to talk. And then we also, like I said in the beginning, would love for everyone to ask all and any of questions that you have. Okay, David, on to you.
All right. I'm going to go over a couple things. Not see if I can share my screen here, and then I have not done this before. Okay, can y'all see the screen now? Or and let me go. Where was it? Okay. Okay. This is the app recommended by, if you want to just do a very simple sound recording. I haven't done it with the microphones yet. This is an app that I've just started using. It's Voice Recorder Pro, recommended by the good people at Cornell Lab. It has a lot of interesting, I'm not going to go over all the different settings on it, but this is what it looks like from the App Store. And whoops, that is not what I meant there. Okay. And they have, and I'll put the links in the chat, I guess. They have a nice little way of setting it up here. They give you all the little settings. And once you've set it up, you don't have to do it again every time. So just go through and set it the way that they recommend it. And it should be good. Then once you open up the app, you can see the screen there. You just hit record and boom, it records. And you can, if you want to share it with yourself, you can play it back, see what you got, send it to yourself by email, text yourself, put it on Google Drive, put on a whole bunch of things that I don't understand on here. If you have Boxcloud, whatever, you can put it on that or whatever too. So basically there's a bunch of different ways. It's very simple, very easy to record, and a lot of different ways that you can share it with yourself and get it onto your computer, at which point you will want to edit it. And there are links on how, and I'll go over, I should show you how I usually do. This is a recording I made this morning here. I can't play the sound for you, so it's not gonna be quite as useful, but one of the things that they tell you to do is trim it up. When you have a sound file, when you first start up, there's probably gonna be some little clutter and stuff at the beginning, so you go in and, oh, by the way, I'm using Adobe Audition here too, if I failed to mention that. Adobe Audition and Adobe and Audacity are a couple of different sound editing apps that you can use that are recommended by Cornell Lab. We're not going to go into all the details of how to set it up and all that. Just trust me, that's one thing that you can do. And that's something we may split out and do as a separate bird chat next season or something like that, and get into more details of this stuff. But just to show you how quick and easy it is once you get it set up, you kind of cut the end off there. You can see a couple little clicks on whoops, let me see. Some of the ends part here, I'll get rid of that. Insert some silence in there. This end part of the recording here, that was me talking. So they want to separate that out from when you're doing your recording. They like you to have some sort of notations at the end, annotation saying where you were, what kind of habitat you're in, what you're recording, that kind of stuff, and keep that separate from the bird audio with a little 1 second silence in there, and get rid of whatever other stuff you've got in there. And then I will. And another thing that's really interesting is normalizing. You notice that, well, let me get back to notice how you can kind of see where the spectrogram is down in here. There's a lot of clutter. I was using the app without an external microphone, so there's a lot of clutter down in the bottom here. It's kind of weak. If you were to play this back right now, you could sort of hear it fairly well, but you can't hear it great. If you normalize it, it makes it, well, it's still very cluttered because it was a non-directional, but it makes it a little bit louder, and essentially it raises the volume level up and makes it easier to hear it and easier. And I'll trim off all the bottom clutter there, makes it much better. Then you can save it. And I'll quickly don't worry about what I'm typing there. That's my own little personal notations there. So, and then you can go to the checklist. Where are you? Oh, wait. I gotta go into there. And that was this. That was this morning at Miko Scrub Sanctuary, the first one. Okay, so they make it pretty easy to edit. It's just a simple drag and drop. Click on Add Media, pull up your file, you can move it over. This was, and where did Carolina Wren go in there? Drag and drop it. And it's very slowly uploading right now, but I think it's got a lot of bandwidth because of the presentation. But there we go. And then you click done and it's in there. And so then you go in there and there's your file. You can, takes a little bit to process it, but then it's that simple to upload. So to edit and upload. So if you don't want to go the microphone method, that's how you want to go with it. So that's kind of my little non-technical contribution here. Natasza knows all the technical parts of it actually. So anyways, so I think that's pretty much what I went through. That a lot quicker than I expected, but anyways, but we do want to open it up for people to have questions. I know when I do these kind of presentations, I want people to come out, want people to learn from it personally, you know, ask their questions and come away knowing, because what we want you to do is to feel like you can go out there after this presentation, you can start learning your birds and recording your birds out there and making contributions. Like, of course, I went over it really quickly. There's a lot more to that, but that's where your questions can come in. So anyways.
One thing I wanted to add to what David was explaining about the editing is it's important to, so for example, when you have a recording, so let's say, for example, you recorded a Bachman sparrow, but right before the Bachman sparrow started singing in your recording, there was a pine warbler. You want, and you're gonna upload your recording under Bachman sparrow, you want to remove the recording, the beginning recording of the pine warbler. And the reason for that is because when people are looking at your recordings, because they want to learn, and that's one of the reasons why I love recording, is because I know that people are using my recordings to learn. You know, just like I go and look at other people's recordings as a reference as well. It can get confusing if you put a recording of, like I said, Bachman sparrow, but then the first song is from a pine warbler, and someone who's trying to learn, they think that pine warbler is the Bachman sparrow. So it can get a little bit confusing. So when you're editing and you have a species overlap, it's important to remove the species that, at least for the first call, to be the species that you're going to be uploading it to.
So when we were talking beforehand, an Audition that you both use is part of the Adobe suite. So if anybody has that already, you can just download that. But otherwise, you want the Audacity, which is the free one, Audacity.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that I've got a bunch of Merlin recordings on my phone. So just gotta hit the download button and get them to my computer and then edit them. That's what many of us probably have.
Oof. Yeah, so night migration, if I could stay up at night, that would be great. So that's the problem. So I have been trying to record night calls for a while, and I am not a night person. And so I have heard that people use different methods. They put microphone inside a little bucket. Like, let's say you have your yard and you've got your recorder, and they kind of just leave it out there. And then, they go and, the next day they'll download the things that they recorded. Yeah, I am not 100% sure on that because I have difficulty staying up at night. So I unfortunately have not made any, had much experience of making like night migration recordings. So yeah.
I go
Don't
out
have
and
that much.
listen, but I have not recorded because that's beyond my expertise. But it is, a lot of people are doing it though. So and it does provide really good snapshot of what's going over at night in certain areas. So it is a valuable thing, but not something that I have experience with, or I'm not a night person either, actually. So
now I'm gonna have to force it this fall. Like, oh man, now I've got to do it.
yeah.
So what did you say about Voice Record Pro?
Voice Record Pro is the app that the Cornell lab people recommend for recording out in the field. And I put in the links for the app, so you can see where it is. It's on the App Store. Just look for Voice Record Pro, and also more importantly, the link to set it up, so you can set up the guidelines. You don't necessarily have to know what the guidelines necessarily mean, but you want to record in WAV files. That's one thing they really push. WAV is a more high quality sound file than MP3 that Voice Memo or something like that would do. Has a lot more, records a lot more information, and it's a lot better for wildlife and bird call recordings. And I also put in the guidelines for the preparation there. I kind of went over that quickly when I was doing, but the basics of that is trimming and trimming the beginning and ending. And like Natasha said, you probably should, if you record uploading a Bachman sparrow, don't have 15 seconds of pine warblers at the beginning of it. Make sure you get the Bachman sparrow. And I often have that's a trick, can be tricky when you're editing, because birds don't sing by themselves in little vacuums, and so you often have, even with a directional microphone, there's going to be multiple birds in that direction, sometimes in those habitats, and if you're recording early in the morning, so sometimes you will have multiple species in there. And so and they do recommend, that's where the annotation at the end can come in. After you finish recording, you just say, primary target was pine warbler or Bachman sparrow, but there was also pine warblers and other stuff in the background. You can put that in your recording at the end in that annotation. You can also add notes when you upload. I didn't go through the once you upload your file, you also want to go in there and they want information like what kind of microphones you were using or equipment and all that. And also there's an interesting little section in there, other species recorded. And so you would say pine warbler was singing in the background, and maybe make some text notes in there, just so people, if they're, if they're listening to it, they can, whoever's evaluating your recording can say, okay, there was 4 other species in there, but the primary species was this one or whatever. And sometimes I'll even have 2 competing species, and so I'll just do the recording submitted on both different species, and then just have the alternate, because so I may have 2 species just going at it together, and it's like, well, okay, I'll just record it, and edit it and save the file twice and label it, and then throw it, put it in each species account. And it is nice that they have that other species recorded in there, which has actually been kind of interesting for me, because I've occasionally forgot to put something on the eBird checklist, and I go to try and add it into the other species in the background, and it's like it won't let me, and I was like, oh, I forgot to put that on the checklist. So I've gone back. It's actually improved my eBirding a little bit, I think, to do that. So that's kind of interesting feature. But yeah, it's when you read the recording tips and all that, you can tell these people are definitely, you know, real pros, and it can be a little bit intimidating for some people. So don't let it into, you know, if you get the Voice Record Pro and set it up like they want, get out there and record. Just start, you know, even with your iPhone, it's a non-directional or omnidirectional phone, which means it's picking up sounds from all different directions. That's why you get airplanes and highway noise and all that kind of stuff in there. It's really best to use a directional speaker. In fact, I'm probably gonna have to break down and get one actually and hook it up to my phone now with especially the windscreen.
Get the MP8, get this one.
Yeah, that's I'm seeing
telling
that.
you, this is a gem right here. This is
More
a
money.
complete gem.
Yeah, I can afford that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's all been anyways, but yeah, that kind of stuff, that having the windscreen and all that, and having a directional speaker makes a directional microphone, I'm sorry, makes a big difference, because it gets rid of a lot of that background noise. Because almost anywhere you go to record in Florida, you're going to be picking up. When you start recording bird sounds, you realize just how many little private airplanes fly around in Florida out here. Almost everywhere you go, there's airplane noise out there. The directional speaker will help with a lot of that, because it tends to focus the recording straight ahead. So unless you're like pointing it up at the airplane, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of airplane noise. But you know, even if you can't, even if you don't get a directional speaker, sometimes it's good for sometimes I will literally say in the annotation, this was a documentary recording, because it was a terrible recording. I recorded blue grosbeaks in Indian River County the other day. They're a little outside the breeding range, and I was doing the June challenge, and there was a couple singing nearby there. There was a bunch of cows are mooing like crazy all around there. So it was really a recording of the cows and the meadowlarks with a few blue grosbeaks in the background. But you can hear them, and it does document that rare bird. So it's a crappy recording of blue grosbeak, but you know, it was oh, somebody was asking for the model number and the info on the recommended microphone. So
Sure, I could. I'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah. So it wasn't a great recording, but it did do its job, at least of documenting. So it's kind of like some of the pictures I've taken are horrible pictures, but you can see it's bird what the bird it is. So so it's another way of documenting rare birds sometimes, as well as making really nice recordings. So they don't have to be the prettiest recordings, but they can still be useful. But I'm definitely getting the microphone now. That's something I've been putting off for a long time. I guess I got to break down and do that, especially if I can hook it up to my phone. So that'll be a good start.
Yes. So I put in the chat the model, the MKE 200 model. The one, like I said, the one I have is the 400, and the MKE 200 is about half the size of this. And that one is, I think it's about $80 right now. And it's a gem, like I said. And then so someone in the chat asked, would a video recorder also pick up bird calls? So there have been many times that I had my camera and I was recording a video with this microphone attached, because I usually use it to my camera, but also without microphone. So the short answer is yes, you can. And so what I've done is, let's say that I'm making a video of a bird, it's singing the sounds, like I want to get the sound as an audio file. So what I'll do is I'll take the video and I will drop it in Audition, and Audition will strip the video file and you get only the sound file. If you create, so in Audition, you have the option of creating new files, and some of them, one option, I believe it's called mono. And so you create a new file, you drop your video in there, and the program automatically strips the video from it, and you only get the audio file. So you definitely can use a video recorder to make a video of bird call or song, and then you can edit it out. It's very simple. Yeah, Cornell does have a section on how to extract audio from your video. So and you can also take snapshots. If you're taking video of something, you can get photos out of it as well. If you can take that's a different thing than Audition, but there are also ways to grab snap screenshots, I guess they call it, from the video. I haven't done that yet, but if you're trying to get photographs of flying birds,
that can be a good way to do it. Sometimes you can video, put your camera in video mode or whatever like that, and then you can go through and just go screen by screen, because taking snapshots of flying swallows and things like that can be really challenging, even at that rapid fire. So taking video can sometimes be good with that, for that, as well as audio. So
we have another question in the chat. I think this is for you, David. As a reviewer, what do you think about people with little birding experience listing on eBird everything Merlin says it is hearing?
Oh, we want Alex for that, man. So
yeah.
they throw a lot of cautions for that. And I was just reading through some of the recommendations. Don't just take it at face value when Merlin identifies something. Make sure you verify it first. Merlin has a really nice, when you get your recording, it gives you your list of species, and it as you're playing it back, it highlights the species as it's going through. So, and you can click on the species and pull up a bunch of links to that species, different examples of songs and calls of that species. And so I don't think you should just be taking it for face value that, that Merlin said that's what it is, so that's what it is. You should go back and verify it. And actually, in the process, you can teach Merlin artificial intelligence and all that. But that's becoming more of a problem, especially with newer beginner birders who have grown up with this technology and all that. And I mean, people get fooled by things. We have mockingbirds out there. They're always mocking other birds. We have birds that, blue jays mimic other things. I was looking through a Merlin ID file I recorded last March up in the Panhandle, and it said broad-tailed hummingbird. And I was like, well, I've had broad-tailed hummingbird in Florida, but not recently. So I looked through, and so I played it back, and what it was, there was a cricket or something like that. If you know broad-tailed hummingbird, they have that, that Jetsons car type of, little trill type call. And the cricket actually was pretty close enough to it that, Merlin said it was broad-tailed hummingbird. So I would love to have broad-tailed hummingbird in that county, I'm sure, but I don't think I can verify that from Merlin. So you do need to go back. It does drive some of the reviewers. I actually don't do any reviewing anymore now, because I don't have time for it, and I don't have the patience for it, I think. And this is, thank goodness I'm not doing it now with all the Merlin stuff coming up. But anyways, in a nutshell.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely suggest, because the AI is still learning. So, it's just as I was saying in the beginning of the presentation, of when you're training yourself to bird by ear, that once you get to a certain level that you feel ready, it's best to get eyes on a bird. And so that's the same thing with the Merlin app, where it's like, it's suggesting this, but make sure you get eyes on a bird. One of my examples of Merlin ID app is I was watching wide-eye vireo, and it was mimicking, this was in South Carolina, it was mimicking a great crested flycatcher, and it was doing a great job. So I was like, oh, let me see what Merlin will say. I know it's a wide-eye because I'm looking at it, and it came up as great crested flycatcher. And so, at that time, I told Merlin, like, no, this is not my bird, because that's how you help train the AI, by also saying, no, that's not my bird. So like, when you're out there and you're using Merlin app and it's making these suggestions, it's best to just get your eyes on a bird. And if it is, that's great. Then you can say, yes, that's my bird. But it's also great if you say, no, that's my bird, because that's the way you train Merlin. You're helping train Merlin make those IDs better.
Yeah, and you will run into situations that they don't have all the species in Merlin yet. So there's about 1,000 species out of the 10,000 right now. So oh yeah.
So these are the ones that Allie in her Merlin talk mentioned that need some more recordings.
Well, that's going to be tough. Swallowtail you can get fairly easily. Some of those are not very noisy. So it's gonna be different.
I just got a recording of swallowtail kite with lots of cars in the background, but I got
I think that's good sometimes for treat, because a lot of your recordings can be like that, and that's what birds don't exist in a vacuum. So, but there's a lot of swallowtail kites around right now. They're not making a lot of noise. They do make the most noise around nesting time, but snowy egret has a really interesting call that took me forever to figure out what it was, because I kept hearing them in colonies of other wading birds. So it was hard to eventually, and one finally flew and landed in front of me and made the little weird call that it does. And I was like, okay, that's you making that weird noise. But yeah, some of these separating mottled duck from mallard, good luck with that. So,
Yeah.
doing it genetically is hard enough to do, much less by voice. But yeah, so there's pitfalls in I mean, even people have a hard time with, you know, painted bunting and varied bunting out west, and Philadelphia vireo and red-eyed vireo. Most people can't tell those apart, so I'm not sure if Merlin ever will figure that out, unless there's something it can hear that we're not hearing that would separate them out. But yeah, you can contribute to science. Go find Nande parakeets and get their record. They're really noisy. And there's some in Lakeland. There's a bunch over in Tampa, St. Pete area, and there's some down in some in St. Augustine actually too. So purple gallium would be a fun one. Some of these, you know, one of the things when learning the birds by sound, learn the patterns, because certain things like white-eyed vireos and backbend sparrows, it's almost like every individual has its own little version of the song, but they all follow the same pattern. The backbend sparrow has that long introductory note, and then the t after that. White-eyed vireo has an introductory note, a twitter, and an ending note. So if you learn to recognize those patterns, if you hear a new variation, you can kind of go back to, okay, I don't recognize that specific variation, but I know that pattern, and that's probably a white-eyed vireo then, and then try and find it. So if you're using your eyes and your ears at the same time, it kind of sticks better in your brain. Using more than one sense, you learn it better that way. So, and it's fun, especially the June challenge. You know, it's a good time to be, you got to track them down and see them. So it's a good time to learn your birding by ear, I guess, actually. So.
Yeah. Susan, more questions in the chat?
No, actually, Natasza is good at catching them in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't. Oh, there it is. Now I see the. I didn't even see the question you were talking about. Now I see it. Now that. So, yeah.
Well,
So what time of the day do you think is best if you're just starting? And
For
you do your little to record sounds, like
it's hard to
Not in the
record
morning.
sounds. First thing in the morning is tough because so many things are going all at once. I've got some recordings that I'm not sure what to do with of dawn chorus, even in the wintertime when there's not even as much stuff going on. And there's like 15 or 20 different species on the recording, and none are particularly I mean, there is potentially some value to that. I know they want to, you know, but right now, you'd probably drive Merlin ID crazy with, you know, a dawn chorus recording, and they're not set up too well to upload dawn chorus recordings. So I would go later in the day, maybe a habitat with less bird species around, later in the this time of year there's less birds around, so you know, and birds are breeding. Well, some are past breeding now, so for Florida, you know, the breeding season, once the migrants get through and the winter birds are gone, can be a good time to focus on our local breeding birds in the area. So, but I would avoid, and it's fun to record dawn chorus, but as of right now, it's not very useful for uploading to eBird, because you know there's no dominant species in there, and it's difficult to train Merlin with that. So record dawn choruses for fun, but if you want to do some more useful recordings, wait a little bit until things die down and you've got a little bit better chance to weed out particular individual birds or species at least. So
Yeah, definitely not at the peak of dawn chorus. So like in New York, sometimes I will be up early right when dawn chorus is starting. So there'll be like, you know, just a handful of birds singing, and then there'll be the peak. So it's like, you know, it's like a bell curve. It rises, and then there's the peak where it's like there's so much going on, And then there's the end of the bell there where the birds start to drop off and things get a little quieter. So, you know, I would say that if you did want to record during dawn chorus, because some birds, they're only singing, you know, during that time or whatever, I would say at the very beginning, when that first song starts, avoid the peak, and then right on the trail ends. But just as David said, if you're starting out, I would stay away from dawn chorus. Better to do the afternoon or the evening, or go to a habitat like he suggested that there aren't that many species.
Right.
But if you do want to challenge yourself, I would say stay at the beginning or at the end of dawn chorus.
Yeah, and there are some birds that have certain calls they only make. It's great crested flycatchers have this really interesting little duet that they do pretty much at dawn chorus, and it sounds a lot like the
Yeah.
other Vireo, actually, the way they do it. Their call back and forth. But
Mhm.
I've done a couple recordings just in hotel parking lots, you know, when a cardinal was up an hour before sunrise singing, or whatever.
Yep.
I've seen pretty interesting recordings like that, and it's good to do that because birds sometimes have different songs at different times of the day.
Exactly.
So document those really early songs and dawn
Yeah.
songs. But yeah, there's going to be times when, you know, it's just not. I'd go ahead and record it anyways and just kind of stash it, because someday we may have the technology to deal with dawn chorus or whatever, but we don't have that now. And it's just fun, you know, even if you don't upload it it's fun to go back and listen to the dawn chorus too. So just for your own fun, you know, it's
Yeah.
interesting. But don't expect it to upload it to eBird if you've got that many species together. So anyways.
Yeah, and if you're just starting out birding by ear, please don't start during dawn chorus.
Don't try and learn
Don't
it.
do it.
Enjoy
Don't
it.
do it. It's gonna hurt.
Yeah, just enjoy it, but don't
Yeah, don't try.
don't think you need to identify everything in the dawn chorus, because
No.
even experienced birders can sometimes be tripped up by
Yep.
that.
It can
Yeah.
get rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there a way to splice out like a bird? Like if you have recorded something and there's a lot of birds, or can you
Oh,
yeah.
splice
Oh,
out
yeah.
a little?
Yeah, you can just select the parts you don't want and delete them out of
Mhm.
here. So I did that a little bit. I took the clunkiness at the beginning and a little bit of the very end there right before the so yeah, you can just go and you can go find the bird that you want and get rid of everything else in there. Through the editing software, you just basically select and delete whatever you don't want. And if you make a mistake, there is the undo button there too, so you can always back it
Yeah.
up.
Yep.
So.
Well,
Now, can you actually do anything with the recordings that you make on Merlin, or are they not good enough?
Yeah, you can upload it just like you would from any other app and put it into Audition and do it. Automatically record and save it for you. I don't do it just out of personal preference, but it's not necessarily that Merlin's not any good at recording. So when Merlin records, it is on your phone. It doesn't automatically upload to the cloud or anything like that, but you can take those files from Merlin, put them on your computer, and treat them like any other file that you recorded anywhere else. They do ask, and I didn't get into it when I was doing my little example there, but you can pull up that file once you've uploaded it, and there's a bunch of metadata in there. You can tell it what kind of recorder you use, what kind of apps you're using, what kind of microphones, whether you use playback or not, because they want to know that. Sometimes birds will sometimes call differently if you've played a call to them versus they're just singing on their own. So and of course that's where you put in your other species and all that. So if you did use Merlin or whatever app you use, you know, there's a little field for that. You can put that in there and let them know what app you use for that. So I didn't want to get too far into that, because like I said, that's we can split that out into an entirely different bird chat and get into more
Yeah.
details on several subjects.
Yeah, I think that would definitely need a different bird chat. Is that something that I do is I put in like my recorder name, which microphone I used, and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, they have fields for all of that, but like I said, we didn't. You know, we could probably do 5 or 6 different bird chats off of some of the split
Yep.
off of the subjects that we did on today, but we just wanted to give you an overview and let you know some of what's out there and how to use it. So
Very good.
that's very good. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, of
You're
course.
welcome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I'll take you
Natasha.
up on that, doing a follow-up. Okay, keep it in mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody, thank you for coming. We'll see you. The last one is next week, and then
Yes.
we need
Right.
ideas, though. If you have any ideas for us, please send.
Sure.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, you
Bye.
guys.